Welcome to Diamonds and Dumpster Fires, the show where we talk about finding strength when life falls apart. I'm your host, Melly, and around here, resilience isn't perfection. It's falling flat, getting back up, and maybe laughing about it later. From breakups to breakthroughs, we mix faith, neuroscience, and a little sass to help you rebuild a life that actually feels like yours. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Diamonds and Dumpster Fires. I want to open today with a little bit of truth, and that is I almost didn't record an episode this week. I started a new job last week. There's a lot happening in my life at this moment, and to be totally honest, I am exhausted. So my first instinct was, if I can't make a really good episode, maybe I should just skip it. And then I realized, actually, no, I shouldn't skip it. There's probably a lesson in this exact situation. And so that's where we are right now. The idea today is that showing up doesn't always have to look the same. So today's episode is the minimum viable version of showing up. Now, we tend to think consistency means doing something at the same level every time, but our capacity is always changing. Some weeks you will have 100% of yourself to give to, any given project. Some weeks you don't. Maybe you have 10%, 50%, whatever it is. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. You just can't always give 100%. So resilience is partly being able to adapt without abandoning what matters to you. Have you ever fallen into that all or nothing trap? Here's a few ways it might show up in your life. If I can't do a full 60-minute workout, why bother to do any at all? When really, the fact is if you just did 10 minutes, that's better than nothing. Or, if I can't clean the whole house, I won't even start. When the reality is maybe just clearing out one drawer would be enough for today. Or how about this one? If I don't have 30 minutes minimum for prayer or quiet time, I just won't bother at all. When maybe that 5 minutes that you could have spent would have been really, really fruitful. And of course, for me, if I can't produce this episode the way I normally would, then I am personally tempted to not publish one at all. But that less than ideal state is not the same thing as not worthwhile. So this is where we can define the minimum viable version. So what is the smallest version of this that still honors what matters to me? And that minimum viable, if that sounds familiar to you, maybe you work in tech, maybe you've just heard it before, but that is a way that we in the tech world will, when we're launching a product, we go for the minimum viable product. What is that minimum that we can, ship out into the world to see if it lands rather than building and building and building and then shipping something and finding out, oh, hey, guess what? Nobody wanted this. So in a similar way, what is that smallest version of whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish that still honors what matters to you? So maybe that means taking a 10 or 15-minute walk for exercise. Maybe it's connecting with someone by sending one text when you don't have it in you to make a phone call. Maybe it is just clearing off one space, clearing off your desk or cleaning out one drawer. Maybe it's a spiritual practice of spending 1 or 2 minutes in silence with the Lord. And trust me when I say sometimes I have had the best times with the Lord in sometimes the shortest moments. It's just being present and being faithful. So, and of course, for me this week, the minimum viable version of a podcast is going to be this super short episode. So let's make an important distinction here because when we're looking at, the minimum viable version of anything, it isn't about lowering the bar forever. This, there are seasons in our lives when we have a lot to give, when we need to challenge ourselves and put ourselves out there and do all of the things. But there are also seasons in our lives when forcing our usual standard can turn into unnecessary self-punishment. As I mentioned, I just last week started a new job. I've been working on edits for my book, which I'm really excited about. I have been recording a couple of audiobooks, and I've been trying to, manage all these different little tasks and things that have come up. I've been reorganizing my house. I've been trying to, get involved in all kinds of ministry opportunities that have come my way. And the reality is that I need to scale back a little bit temporarily rather than giving up on the things that matter to me. But otherwise, I'm heading for burnout again, which is exactly what I wrote my book about. So I definitely don't want to end up there again. So the goal is, of course, to preserve a rhythm until you have more capacity again. And remember this, God isn't measuring our faithfulness by productivity. There are times when obedience and faithfulness look very ordinary and very small, and that is totally okay. Look at the widow's offering. The significance wasn't the impressive size of what she gave, it was the fact that she gave what she had. Think about this idea. Offer to God what you genuinely have rather than constantly judging yourself for what you don't have. Now, think about something that you're struggling to keep up with right now, because while this episode is short, I want to actually make it useful. So gather in your mind a thought of something. It could be multiple things, but try to narrow it down to something you're struggling to keep up with right now. And then ask yourself this simple question. What would the minimum viable version of this project, event, whatever it is, look like this week? Not forever, just for this week. What would allow you to stay connected to the thing without draining yourself further? It might take you some time to think through that, or maybe it comes to you right away, but just sit with that for a moment. What is that minimum viable version, and what would that look like this week? Remember this, maybe resilience isn't always pushing yourself to do more. Sometimes it's refusing to let perfectionism convince you that a small effort doesn't count. So this episode is my minimum viable version of showing up this week, and I hope that it gives you permission to find yours. Until next time, friends, be well. Thanks for listening to Diamonds and Dumpster Fires. If today reminded you that resilience is a practice, not a personality trait, you're in the right place. Keep showing up, keep rebuilding, and don't forget, even diamonds start as pressure and mess. For more faith-filled encouragement and real-life tools to help you heal and grow, check out the show notes for some free resources and ways to stay connected. See you next time.